Hey, Margie here. Are you ready to learn what's really important in your skincare routine? Well, if so, you are in the right place because our special guest today is Dr. Keira Barr. And Dr. Keira is not only a dual board certified integrative dermatologist, but she blends science with soul as a somatic coach and breathwork guide. And she empowers women around the world with the tools needed to help them gain the control, clarity, and confidence they crave during their midlife experience. As the host of the Skinny Dipping Prescription podcast and creator of Somatic Skin Science, she redefines skincare as the embodiment of our lived experience through conversations, straight up truths, and tangible, actionable advice. Her work has been featured in MindBodyGreen, Better Homes and Gardens, Reader's Digest, Glamour, Self, Oprah Magazine, and more. And today we're going to talk about the most common concerns women are having and what are the biggest myths and misconceptions when it comes to skincare. And she tells us what's important in our routine, what's the best sun care, and gives us just lots of great tips that we can put into our life. So stay tuned. Welcome, Kira. I'm really happy to have you here on the podcast. I love the work you do. And this is something that people are really interested in because there's so many misconceptions. And I think today you're going to help clear a lot of those up. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope so. That's the whole goal anyway.
Well, I just love the fact that you're a dermatologist, you're in integrative medicine, and you put all these pieces together. But what are you finding are the most common concerns that women are coming to you with? What do you find as women? I know you work with a lot of people over 50. What are you finding are the most common issues that people are dealing with?
Yeah, I think, with my background in dermatology, a lot of women are looking at their aesthetic, right? They're looking at the dark circles, they're looking at the fine lines and the wrinkles and the texture and the tone of their skin, and they just want to know, what product do I use? And I'm like, yeah, there's some really great products out there and you could spend a ton of money, but that's not where I really like to start the conversation. For me, it's really about, um, I use an acronym called Our Senses and really looking at your relationship to everything in your environment. So for me, skincare is so much more than what you put on your skin. It's about everything you think, feel, and do. Because everything you think, feel, and do either affects what shows up on your skin or how you feel in it, right? So before we even dive into what products you should use, and there's really only 3 or 4 that I would recommend, right? So save your pennies. It's really looking at, okay, what's happening in your life right now? What are the things that are impacting how you're feeling in your skin and what is showing up on it? And that's all about lifestyle.
I love that. And yeah, so we're going to, dive more into this. But what do you see are the biggest misconceptions? Because you're right. And I think, unfortunately, in traditional dermatology, oftentimes, oh, I have some eczema. All right, I'll give you a cream, and it's so often just treating the symptoms. And it sounds like you're looking at a much deeper approach to figure out root causes and deal with them. So, but just tell us a little bit about maybe some of the myths and misconceptions that you see on a regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll name that I no longer have a traditional clinical derm practice. I really have stepped away from that because what I found is, to your exact point, we were prescribing medications and just treating the surface and the symptoms and not really addressing what was happening beneath the surface. And more specifically, the mental and emotional aspects. We know that stress and unresolved trauma can have such an impact on both triggering the onset of skin conditions as well as, once you're diagnosed with a skin ailment, the stress that that can create, not just for you, the individual, but especially, with something like eczema or psoriasis, where it impacts the people around you in terms of your capacity to be intimate, to connect with others. So I think a lot of the myths and misconceptions are that, we just, all you need is a pill. All you need is these biologics. And you're good. There's some magic pill or potion. And that's just not the case. That's kind of, it's sometimes it's a bridge, it's a Band-Aid. You need medication, right? To like, you need symptom relief. Great. Now we can take a pause, be able to breathe for a second, and then we can kind of go beneath the surface and see what else is happening. But that's not, unfortunately, how our traditionally trained colleagues are not, they don't have the bandwidth, they don't have that opportunity.
Yeah, it's funny because with osteoporosis, a lot of time in bone loss, you don't have any signs and symptoms, but yet if there's autoimmune issues or other issues, it will manifest as eczema and other things. So you'll get manifestations on the skin. And I find it so helpful because with the proper treatment, they get better. And so it gives you a little window into other things because the bones are connected to the skin and everything, nothing's in isolation. So I love that. In
Yeah.
terms of you have a statement that I like what you said, "Finding comfort in your skin." And what do you mean by that? Because I thought that was, that
Yeah, I think, uh, it can mean a lot of different things. I know for myself, it wasn't until, I mean, I've been in dermatology, it's like 27 years now, right? That's a long time. And it wasn't until fairly recently, connecting the dots, going backwards, that I realized how I even wound up in this field. I thought it was because I love, treating adults and kids, and you could do surgery and histology, which was my subspecialty. But it really comes down to that embodied experience of living in the skin that we're in. And I realized that for most of my life, I was not very comfortable in my skin. I was bullied for birthmarks. Like, so kids had called me coffee stain face, having frizzy hair, and maybe the shape and size of a body that wasn't meeting the social norms of what's considered attractive. And so there's a lot of that. And I think so many of us, especially those of us socialized as women, have experienced um, feeling discomfort because of what others' expectations of us we think should be. And so we might shrink ourselves, we might change ourselves and develop habits and coping strategies that don't serve us very well. So finding comfort in your skin is recognizing that those stories are here, right? I call it a skin story, right? Like, what are the stories that we tell about who we are in the skin, about our appearance, what others people have told us about ourselves that we've allowed to absorb into um, our bones, right? Right beneath this surface. And finding comfort is recognizing, well, what of that story do I want to keep? What really honors who I truly am at my core? And what of that story might need to be exfoliated and shed and stripped away so that you truly can be most aligned with your most authentic self, right? You talk about happiness a lot. Like, what are the things that make you truly happy, that you feel it from the inside out? And and that really is when you find the true comfort, because you're no longer, I don't know, wearing a mask. You're no longer wearing layers, right? So many people think of skin as this glorified canvas for makeup or products, or, our bodies as a glorified clothes hanger for the latest trends in fashion. But that's not what skincare is at all.
yeah, so true. So how do you bring this out with the people that you work with, and what have you seen with taking this approach?
Yeah, it is amazing. It is truly transformative because most people don't think about their skin from that perspective, right? They look at it and they look in the mirror and they criticize themselves and they have contempt for the fine lines, the wrinkles, the cellulite, the sagging. And my invitation is to look at the skin for, you know, this magnificent, just like your bones, like without your skin and your bones, that's a foundation. It's your ultimate barrier between you and the outside world. All the functions that your skin actually does to support you and protect you. It is your greatest asset and your greatest ally, and it's a source of constant information. So I see the skin as a window to your nervous system. What's happening with your stress response cycle? Because when our stress response cycle is activated, right, there's release of that primary stress hormone cortisol, which we need for our survival. But cortisol also can do a heck of a lot of damage to your skin health. Cortisol, it breaks down your collagen and your elastin, it which impacts, more fine lines, more wrinkling, poor wound healing. It also stimulates your oil glands, so you may be breaking out more. It contributes to inflammation, so irritation, flares of all those skin conditions that we talked about, like eczema or psoriasis or something like that. So when you're seeing those things on your skin, it's just kind of an invitation to, like, hey, I can see my skin as kind of as a helper, like a little guide, like a little birdie on your shoulder saying, hey, maybe you need a little rest. Hey, maybe we need to look at your diet. Hey, who are you spending your time with? So it's going to be different for each individual, but it's really using what you see as an invitation to understand what's happening in your life, what's serving you and what's not.
I really love that approach because cortisol so negatively, affects our bones and it increases bone breakdown and reduces the bone building cells. So it's, it's something that is a huge piece of everything I teach and do. And it just goes so well together that, when you do practices that your skin's gonna get better as well. What are your favorite practices that you help people with? Have you found certain
Yeah.
ones? Yeah.
Absolutely. So a lot of the work I do is, somatic practices, somatic trauma healing. I would say breath work is probably the most accessible. It's something that, we're always breathing, thankfully. We're still alive, we're breathing. But it's something that you can bring under your conscious control. So I teach a lot of breath work, a lot of different techniques. Um, and, I'm doing it right now. Self touch is just a huge one for me, that kind of grounding a hand to my chest, one to my belly, and just feeling the resonance of my own touch, releasing oxytocin, right? That feel good, that love hormone, to know that, like, in this moment, a lot of us experience anxiety and tension and worry and overwhelm, but just placing a gentle hand on your chest, your belly, or anywhere else on your body that feels comfortable and safe for you can bring an immediate sense of ease and calm and comfort, knowing that in this moment you're okay.
Yeah, that's great. Alright, let's get to this everyone's waiting to hear, what are your skincare tips? Because as you said, yes, it's very important that we wanna I love everything that you've discussed from the inside out, but we still wanna look good and we still wanna take care of ourselves. So when you can mix all of these, dealing with the stress, dealing with any trauma, dealing with all that underlying, and then more even. So, yeah, so why don't you share what you would say are the most important things that we should all be doing in our skincare routines?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is exactly what I teach in my somatic skincare program. And both, it's a blend of kind of like the lifestyle and tactical things of what can you do for your skin, and also on the other side, that soothing, that mind body connection, the trauma healing, and all the practices that help regulate that stress response to keep your cortisol levels at a healthy level. Right, they're not always elevated. So I really think there's really only 3 or 4 products that you need. I think, hopefully most people have become aware that, um, prolonged exposure to UV radiation contributes to upwards of like 90% of visible signs of aging, right? And I live in the Pacific Northwest, so it's cloudy a lot of the times, but it doesn't matter. 80% of UV rays are still getting through those clouds. So my number one tip for keeping your skin youthful looking and kind of slowing down the natural aging process is sun protection. And so that's an outside in job. It's also an inside out job. So that's actually was the premise of my whole book, The Skin Whisperer, right? Because as a dermatologist and the focus of my career when I was practicing clinically was skin cancer and melanoma, I had to diagnose myself with early melanoma. So sun protection is definitely an outside job with, broad brim hat, wearing some protective clothing, but a tinted moisturizer with SPF 30 or above every single day is really something I recommend for everyone. And the tint is because the iron oxide, it's not just ultraviolet radiation, it's visible light as well. So the tint, in the created by the iron oxide, helps protect against blue light. And
Oh,
I only recommend, um, zinc oxide or titanium dioxide products, primarily zinc, because they're tolerated by most. It's, not very sensitizing. The chemical sunscreens like the avobenzone, the oxybenzone, there was a whole thing a couple of years ago with the FDA about ingredients that, affect the coral reefs, but also there's only a few ingredients that are considered, generally safe and recognized, as by the FDA, and the mineral-based sunscreens. fall under that category. So I only recommend mineral-based
Do you
sunscreen.
have a certain it's very funny because I'm the same way where there's so many toxins in these sunscreens. And so there were several that I had given my children, and they came back totally burned, and they were just, "We're done with your sunscreen," which was terribly upsetting, so I'm still on the hunt for I have some that I think are pretty good, but is there any brands that you think are quite good? Is there
Yeah,
anything
on
in
a
particular?
daily basis, and I have no relationship with any of
Right.
these. Um, the tinted, it's actually like a makeup foundation, so I use it as both, and it's by the brand Ilia, Ilia. It's like super tint, super serum tint or something. It has hyaluronic acid in it, so it goes on so silky smooth. I love
Mm,
it. And that feels really good. Elta MD is another favorite one, and it's relatively, you know, not super expensive because some of these sunscreens are crazy for like a small amount. But Elta MD, you can get it on Amazon. I'm a big fan of that. Um, you know, a lot of different brands like Alba Botanica or even Supergoop that are well known. They make both with the chemical sunscreen as well as the mineral. So you just have to read the back to make sure that
okay.
you're just getting the zinc oxide. Yeah.
Okay, so interesting. I did not know that about the tinted moisturizer. That's something new
Yeah.
that I learned. Wow.
Yeah,
D
yeah, it's really helpful too, especially because we're in front of our computers and our devices, right? So you're getting exposure to blue light all the time. And my office is in front of a window. So the thing about UV rays is it's three rays: UVA, UVB, UVC. UVC we don't have to worry about as much, although with the ozone, they may with global warming and such. But usually they don't penetrate the atmospheric surface. But um, UVA rays can penetrate your window glass. So we call those the aging rays because they don't change intensity or wavelength distance over the course of the year, but they're always present and they can penetrate your window glass. So that's why when you're driving, if you ever notice, look at your drive depending on what country you're in, like your driving side versus your non-driving side. You may have a little bit more sun damage, a little photo damage, hyperpigmentation, and on your driving side because the UVA rays are coming through your window glass. Same with the back of your hands. Oh, that's another tip. No, badly, but if you want to, maintain that youthful appearance, don't just do your face. Your neck and the back of your hands will be a dead giveaway. So you got to treat the face and the back of the hands.
On that note, what about because vitamin D is good for you, like actually be in the sun for short times. So what's your thought on if you leave your arms exposed for a short period of time just to get some vitamin D? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so vitamin D is created from exposure to UVB rays, and UVB rays will um, they vary over the course of the day as well over season to season. So I'm a big fan of getting out in nature. I think sunlight is so important for our mental health and well-being. And, it's all about when, because we want to minimize sun damage. Skin cancer, people may not appreciate this. Skin cancer is the most prevalent cancer in the United States and Canada and in other parts of the world. And there are more new cases of skin cancer than any other cancer combined. So it's no joke. You do want to protect your skin from sun exposure. That being said, getting out earlier in the morning, usually the UV intensity is usually thought to be between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. So if you can get out earlier in the morning or later in the evening, and depending where you are, it still could be pretty hot after 4 o'clock. I'm okay with that. That being said, the studies on sunscreen, even if you slather yourself, when they did studies, over 50% of people, most people don't even use sunscreen, but those who do didn't apply enough for the recommended SPF rating. So the likelihood that you're going to shield your skin from getting UVB exposure to generate your vitamin D is relatively small. And they've done studies on this, and they're actually working on sunscreens to have vitamin D filters so that you can still get your exposure and get your protection. So it's a valid concern, but even so, most of us, depending on where we live, latitude and longitude, we're not getting enough UVB exposure to generate the healthy level of vitamin D that we aspire to anyway. So, most of us are going to have to supplement. So, protect your skin, check your vitamin D levels, and then supplement appropriately.
Okay. Okay, so let's continue. So sunscreen, number 1.
Yes.
And, I think later, I think it would be good to share your story so people understand why you are so passionate and, this skin cancer is not something to minimize at all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
continue though
absolutely.
about with okay, so we got the sunscreen and that's great
Yeah, so
about
that's
taking
like my number
moisturizer.
one. Yeah, that's my number one tip, but I
But so
think
interesting about the computer. That's something new to me as well that because I put on tinted sunscreen every day anyway, that's just my base. But I never thought about in front of the computer that it's actually gonna reduce the blue light as well. Wow, it's very
yeah,
interesting.
totally. Yeah, yeah. Um, so when you think about a skincare routine, you think about cleansing your face, you think about protecting your skin, um, and then rejuvenation. So cleansing your face with a gentle cleanser, the recommendation is twice daily, but if your skin is really dry, you can always I would say if you're going to wash your face, do it at night. Because at the end of the day, you've been exposed to the elements. There may be grime and dirt and polyaromatic hydrocarbons from air pollution. And we know that air pollution is right behind UV exposure in terms of contributing to hyperpigmentation. So you want to wash your face definitely at night. Um, and if you get to it in the morning, great, but definitely at night. And then wearing an antioxidant serum that has at least vitamin C and vitamin E. There's lots of other great ingredients, but those are the two that are most researched and studied, and they work together synergistically. So you want to use an antioxidant product. Your body has its own natural source of antioxidants, but they get depleted, especially stress. This is why I teach so much about stress. Reduction and management and we can't get rid of stress, but it's learning like what are your triggers and learning practices to help regulate that stress response because it consumes those antioxidants quite quickly. So you replenish them with a topical serum. Then you apply, if your skin is a little dry, you can apply a little bit of moisturizer and then your tinted moisturizer with sunscreen, SPF 30 or above. In the evening, you're just repeating it. You're washing your face, you're putting on your antioxidant serum. And then, especially as we get older, our skin cell turnover slows down a little bit. So, adding in a product like a vitamin A derivative, like a topical retinoid or retinol, which is over the counter, and that'll help speed up skin cell turnover, increase collagen production, decrease fine lines and wrinkles, even out tone and texture. Not everyone can handle the vitamin A derivatives because they can be a little bit drying and irritating. So, an alternative ingredient is called bakuchiol. And studies have been done with that ingredient against head to head with vitamin A derivatives and similar efficacy. And the beautiful thing about bakuchiol is that it's also safe to use in pregnancy, whereas topical, retin-A's and such, when taken by mouth are category X. When used on the skin, we use such a tiny amount, but it's always been a cautionary measure. Just don't use it as
So in
close to
terms
time.
of the retinol, because I know there's some that are
Yeah,
prescription that maybe
totally.
aren't so great for us. Yeah, I mean, in terms of being natural, can you just maybe go into that a little more detail? Like
I
which
think
ones we wanna look for in terms of
Yeah.
acne cream?
I think, the prescription strength is phenomenal. I mean, my chairman at University of Michigan had done a lot of the original studies, and that's why I say treat your neck and the back of your hands because the man had no wrinkles on his face because he has been using Retin-A for like, I don't know, 30 or 40 years. And the only way you knew how old he was is if you looked at his neck and the back of his hand. And so the issue with the prescription strength is, you start low, you go slow, and you only use a pea-sized amount. You divide it to the four quadrants of your face, you rub it in, and you use it only at night. You wash it off in the morning. And the reason for this is that topical vitamin A can make you more sun sensitive, right? So you want to use it at night, wash it off in the morning, and then protect your skin, right? So you don't want to take one step forward and two steps back. You got to, you know, amplify the benefit that you're getting by protecting your skin with SPF in the morning. And some people, like myself, I'm quite sensitive. I use it once a week, twice a week. And you play with it, You'll still get the benefit. It's slow and steady. This is not a sprint. This is a total marathon. So you start low, you go slow, you might have to take a little break. Um, so I think the prescription strength ones are great. They used to be covered by insurance. They're not. anymore, so they can be pricey, but a little bit goes a long way. And then there are over-the-counter options like brands like Rock or Olay. They have, retinaldehydes and retinol that, are a little biochemically different, but you will get benefit. It just may be at a slower pace.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, so continue now. We have our couple things we're putting on, and there's nothing to worry about with that in terms of the little amounts that we're putting in. It's just
The
going to
little amounts that you're putting on, nothing to worry about, but it's always you know your skin better than anybody else, right? And your skin is always talking to you, just like your body is talking to you. Those messages, those aches, those pains, the peeling, the dryness, the redness, more is not better. I mean, there were trends where, you exfoliate and use this hydroxy acid and that. If your skin is red and irritated, that is like the big red stop sign. It's like, stop for a second. Give your skin a break. Just use a gentle, plain moisturizer and let your skin recover. And then when you resume, maybe use half the amount you were using before. And instead of using it every day, maybe use it every other day, every couple of days. Use your skin as your guide. It's there to protect you, to serve you. It's your ally. It's not your enemy here, right? So you just use what you see to help you determine the pace at which you should go.
Oh, great, great advice. Do you want to shed any light on some of the because people there are things that people recommend that make your skin way worse before it gets better. That's sort of the philosophy. Is there any of those treatments you want to shed your, light on or your opinion that people are doing on a regular basis?
Well, I think the overexfoliation, I think that's one that people, more is not better. More is not more. Actually, less is more. And really noticing that if your skin is dry and irritated, that is not necessarily the time to do another peel. It might be a time to put on a moisturizer and just that's it. Just even just plain water, rinsing your face, putting on a moisturizer, and let that be it. So I think a lot of these, trends, these cycle it's so funny. This, like, the slugging and I don't know, all the different names for things. I'm like, this is what dermatologists have been telling people for, like, eons. I don't know why it's a new trend. But I think the biggest thing when it comes to skincare is don't listen to what you see on Instagram or, some other platform, because what works for somebody else doesn't necessarily apply to you. Do what is right for you. That's the same thing with diet trends. It's the same thing with all of this other stuff. Like it's nice to hear the things, but you got to tune out so much of the noise
Are
and
there some
decide.
that you really feel are dangerous that you want to
I think, it's like it used to be like with the skin bleaching, and trying to change the appearance of, um, the perineum and the genital area, and it's just like, again, it's a matter of what does it feel like to live in your skin, right? What is your intention for doing all of these things? Whose story are you hearing in your head that you should or shouldn't look a certain way? And from that perspective, decide, okay, which trend that might I want to try? What product might serve me best, right? To use them because you yourself know that do, if I have Botox or if I have filler injected or have a laser treatment, it's because I want it because I feel so good on the inside that I really want the outside to mirror that versus the perspective of, well, if I do Botox, if I do filler, and then if I look younger, then my life will be better. Like it doesn't work that way. You'll never get your return on investment. So I think for all of this stuff, it's do it for you. Listen to your voice in your head and see how that resonates in your body. Like a lot of the work that we do, um, with my clients and in the programs is it's really learning how to attune to that felt sense when you're making these decisions, when you're making these choices, when you're looking in the mirror so that you know that you are doing it from a place of alignment with what you truly want versus someone else's words that have gotten under your skin.
have you seen any problems with people who have done some of these treatments? 'Cause people do
Unfor-
them from a very young age now. People are starting, in their 20s, if they start seeing wrinkles, right away to stop
Yeah.
them. So have you, because you've been working with this is your profession and you're
Yeah.
working at it as a physician. So it's just interesting to hear your perspective on, any warnings or that what you've seen over the years.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is from the mental and emotional side of things, right? The eating disorders, the body dysmorphia, and especially the body dysmorphia as aesthetics has grown, and we're seeing younger and younger people, trying these trends and these fads. Um, and then they change their physical appearance, and they're like, "Hey, how come I don't feel any better? Why isn't my life any better? Why am I not getting the job? Why am I not in a relationship? Why am I not this, that, or the other thing?" And it's because it was never about that. It was never about that. And I think that's kind of one of the biggest downsides is really opening up that conversation and normalizing so much of where the anxiety and the stress and the overwhelm comes from, right? It's okay not to be okay, but let's talk about it. Let's normalize your experience. That once we talk about that, if you still feel like, oh yeah, I want the Botox, I want the filler and the laser, cool, that's great. Then you'll get a return on your investment that is you're happy with. But a lot of it has to do with thinking that these procedures are going to change their lives, and that's not really what's at the core of the issue.
I guess you must see that a lot where people come in and they feel, that's an interesting perspective what you're saying. People are coming in thinking if they get this, then my life will be better. And what you're saying is they're totally missing the boat. It doesn't work that way at all.
And none of and not to their it's not their fault. That's how it's been marketed. That's what we've been led to believe. But so many of the women I work with, a lot of it too, especially those of us over, 40 and 50, and as our hormones are shifting and our bodies are changing, and, with your significant other and not feeling as sexy or wanting to be intimate, a lot of that is our own thoughts and our own body comfort and confidence, right? And it has a lot to do with what our needs are now versus what they used to be. That spontaneous desire versus, something that is created. And we think that something has gone wrong because it's not like it used to be. And we're blaming it on I have so many women who, because I had done, a mini fellowship in menopause medicine, and for a little while, I was prescribing bioidentical hormones. And women, we were getting their hormones balanced on paper, but they still were feeling anxious, overwhelmed. They didn't wanna have sexual relations with their husbands and what have you, and because it wasn't just about the hormones, right? It's about what are your needs right now? You know, what is in your life, what needs to be removed or what I call, like, exfoliated, the habits, the thoughts, so that it can reveal what you truly want and you can ask for that and you build that capacity through practice, through support, so that you can experience all the joy that you deserve at this stage of life.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So what have you seen with this approach? I love this approach. I mean, I
Yeah,
believe that this is so important.
it is really amazing. So, I can think of one client in particular where she was just arguing with her husband all the time. Like they were remodeling their house and she was just feeling so frustrated and she didn't want to have anything to do with it because she felt like she wasn't being heard. Like her opinion didn't matter, but she wasn't really speaking up. She was kind of just swallowing it and then just being resentful. And so we worked with, all right, well, like when this happens, how does that affect you? How does that feel in your body? And we did a lot of kind of like somatic, like movement. It's not just words, right? Because we can get caught up in our head all the time. It was more of dropping out of our head into our body. And how does it feel to live in the skin that you're in during those experiences? What needs to move? What needs to be released? What needs to be, moved through? And it was amazing that, we would do these type of practices and soon, it was coming out as her spoken voice, telling her husband exactly what she wanted, what she needed, how she needed to be supported, that she didn't feel supported. And all of a sudden they were communicating better. They were going out on dates. Like it was just a beautiful evolution because she realized, oh my gosh, this is being stored in my body. I'm feeling it. It's getting under my skin. Right. And it's that awareness and then learning the tools and the skills to be able to bring it to the surface and work through it in a way that's supportive versus just stewing in anger and resentment.
And then what do you see? What are the physical manifestations of this work? So what happens then with their skin?
Well, to your point, we were talking earlier about like aches and pains. A lot of it is this one woman in particular, like she was having a lot of back issues and her pain started to go away because she felt a lot more lighter, freer, that there was movement in her body. She, most women say that their skin looked lighter and brighter because their stress response is more regulated, right? Their cortisol levels are coming down. They're getting more restful sleep. They feel more at peace. Learning simple breathwork techniques can help regulate their stress response throughout the day. So it's kind of just a kind of a global skin glow that and the studies are there. If you look at the research on breathwork and skin health, it's it's really amazing and not anything that you actually have to add to your to-do list because you're breathing all the time. It's just learning certain tools and techniques to help leverage what you're already doing.
Yeah, it's so wonderful because it's it just helps every part of your body, including your bones. I mean, it's just so great to now, when people are sort of detoxing, so let's say they're going through, they're working with you, do you find that their skin may get worse before it gets better sometimes? When they're getting rid of some of the negativity? What have you seen with that?
Interesting. I haven't, and I'll name that I'm moving towards um, you know, working with more specific skin issues, but a lot of the clients that I have been working with, it's more of like the fine lines, the wrinkles, the dark circles. They're not having significant outbreaks per se. They're not having a huge detox reaction. So I haven't seen that. It's usually the opposite, where things are calming down. Their skin isn't as irritated and inflamed and dry. They're really starting to notice an improvement in the tone and the turgor and the texture because we're also incorporating some of the lifestyle factors that'll help support and nourish the skin from the inside out. And then also, it's that, again, a sense of ease and calm and confidence and trust that their skin really isn't their enemy, that they're working together as a team. And that also helps really help radiate that glow. And it's a glow that is sustainable. It's not something that's going to fade when your bottle of serum runs out and you need to run to the store because you're learning tools and skills that'll serve you for a lifetime.
No, isn't that fantastic?
Yeah. It is, and it's a lot less expensive than filling your, medicine cabinet with a ton of serums.
Well, you said a couple things though. So warning signs. So it's not okay if you have black circles. Like what are the few, warning signs that people listening, should say, oh yeah, maybe I have some issues I have to deal with. You want to share a few? You
Yeah,
mentioned that like the dark
absolutely.
circles, anything else that because
Yeah.
that's not okay. You shouldn't have big dark circles, correct?
Right, well, there are some people, they call them allergic shiners. There's some of us that, our genetics, right? We have very thin skin, underneath our eyes. It's among the thinnest areas. So there's some of us that have always had kind of darker, circles and such, because of the vasculature that's there, but it's an exacerbation of that, right? If you're noticing it's different than your normal. The other thing, especially as we are maturing, and our hormones are declining, I think gut issues become a challenge when our stress response, we're always chronically stressed. That is going to shift all your other hormones out of balance. And you will see evidence of that, especially thyroid hormone, which I know is a significant issue, especially for women over 40, hypothyroid, and Hashimoto's is an issue, but the lateral third of your eyebrows, if it becomes very thin and sparse, that could be a sign that, your thyroid function, is needing some attention or at least to be investigated. Thinning of your hair, widening of the part can look like male pattern baldness, and that's a sex hormone imbalance. And certainly, you know, as we are going through perimenopause and through the menopause and postmenopause, progesterone is the hormone that's going to go down first. So you might notice you're a little bit more anxious and irritated, but progesterone also plays a role in hair growth regulation because it's testosterone that is and the forms of testosterone that contribute to hair loss. So there's a relative imbalance, and there's nothing blocking that conversion of certain hormone. And you might notice widening of your parts. So there may be an androgen dominance. So that's something to notice. If all of a sudden your hair is thinning and you're shedding at a more dramatic rate, we all lose about 100 hairs a day. That's normal. But if you're noticing that your hair is, becoming much finer, thinner, and your part is widening, that's something to be alerted to. The other thing about metabolic dysfunction and sugar, and like your blood sugar and insulin dysregulation, some people may get kind of a darkening or velvety appearance, what we call acanthosis nigricans, especially around the folds of your neck, in your groin, in your axilla, underneath your breasts. So those are signs that, again, your hormone balance may need some attention. Those are some of the biggest ones that I
Oh,
would say.
okay. Great,
Yeah.
great. We could talk forever, but I did want 2 things I wanted you to do. One is just share your story because I think it's empowering, and I think, there's something to be said about, why you think people need to check for skin cancer, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
totally. I'd be happy to. It's kind of like when your mass becomes your mission. So I had mentioned that, I was bullied as a kid for what was on my skin, made fun of for my body as a young teenager because I wasn't like a skinny little mini, that people thought I should be. So very uncomfortable. And I tried to whittle that away with over exercising. I was running ultra marathons. This was about no, 11 years ago, running ultra marathons. My dad is a redhead, even though I'm a brunette. So I grew up getting lots of sunburns. This is before I knew how the sun could negatively impact. So I had lots of sun damage. So I was practicing clinical dermatology, had done a melanoma fellowship. The focus of my practice was skin cancer and melanoma. So I had young kids. So I was, you know, over exercising, overworking, trying to juggle all the things. And I always tell people to party in their birthday suit on the date of their birthday every single month, looking for any uninvited guests, right? You have to do a self skin exam. You have to know your skin better than anyone else, including your intimate bits. So, ladies, you got to get your hand mirror because melanoma occurs where the sun doesn't shine. So I was doing my own skin exam and I found a spot on my arm. Now, I had been getting biopsies for years, changing pigmented moles that were becoming more atypical. But when I found this one spot on my arm, I knew something was really wrong. And my subspecialty, I had done a fellowship in histology. So I could diagnose it clinically as something wrong. And then underneath the microscope, I was like, oh my gosh, this is early melanoma. And that was my wake up call that all the things I thought I was doing right? I thought a little exercise was good, a lot was even better. They weren't right for me. And what I discovered that underneath all of that was stress, unresolved trauma, chronic stress in all its forms, UV exposure, over exercising, eating a diet that really wasn't nourishing me in the way that I needed it to, not really filling my days with things that brought me joy, right? All of these stressors and not understanding the importance of sleep. And so it really led me down a different path of like, all right, how do I nourish myself? How do I live in this skin that I'm in a way that feels good instead of always trying to get out of it, how to jump out of it, trying to be different. And it really informed the philosophy that I have now and how I support women around the world because as a physician, I had no idea that this is what was happening, that my skin was sending me messages all the time. There were whispers and then there were shouts, right? If I didn't know, how is the average person who doesn't have a medical background supposed to understand and connect the dots? So that really has informed everything that I do now. And it really, it's, yeah, become my life's work.
That's so fabulous because so often we're just so disassociated from our bodies, and with all the creams to mask the symptoms, we don't really have to be. Oh, I have a little of this. Let me just throw this on it. You know,
Bye-bye.
so tell us about your programs. I know you have something coming up. You want to just share how you've
Yeah.
integrated this philosophy into the work you're doing currently?
Absolutely. So it's called somatic skincare. So soma is the body, and it's really this embodied experience of living in the skin we're in. All the things that impact our skin from the outside in and the inside out. And we talk about all of that: relationships, sleep, stress, your environment, how you nourish yourself, all of those kind of lifestyle factors. And the other side of that is learning all the tools and techniques, breathwork, visualization, meditation, to help better regulate our stress response so that we can have the levels of cortisol that we need when we need it, right? Because stress is a normal adaptive behavior, but to not always be in a chronic state of high stress so that that cortisol is not messing with your skin, messing with your hormone regulation and all of that. So it's really this beautiful blend of, you know, ancient wisdom with cutting edge modern neuroscience and blending them together so that women really understand how they can radiate that glow from the inside out, the outside in, and sustain it.
Oh, that's great. And so when people go to your website, is that the and they'll be able to access the program there?
So they should be able to. It's just about ready. It's somatic skincare. We should have a sign on the website. Otherwise, I can share that link with you. Um,
Yeah, so
so
why
that
don't you just tell everybody what the website is?
yeah, it's Dr. Kira. So it's Dr. My first name, KiraBarr.com. And then it'll be slash somatic skincare.
And one more thing you have for everybody, though. You have this quiz. You wanna just share what that is?
Yeah, yeah. So everyone's always wondering, like, what, does my skincare routine need a makeover? What product should I use? And so I created a quiz to help you know what part of your skincare routine might need a makeover and exactly what you need to do to change that. And it's not, as you've heard throughout this entire conversation, it's not necessarily going to be about products. In fact, it probably won't be, but it's very important information. Like when you're looking in the mirror and you're seeing certain things and you're wondering why, well, this quiz will tell you exactly why.
And we'll have the link in the show notes. Do you know the link offhand? Because we can s
And yourskincarequiz.com.
Oh, easy enough. Okay, perfect. Well, think any last minute things before we end? This has been so wonderful, and I think it's just I believe in this too. I mean, I believe reducing stress and increasing happiness is the foundation of health, and that's what I've seen my whole career. So it's just really wonderful to see how you take this important piece and made this the foundation of your work as a dermatologist and have seen so many wonderful results in terms of, what you're seeing on the skin. So I just
Uh,
totally love this. It's
Thank
fantastic.
you. I
Any
appreciate that.
any last minute things before we end?
I would just encourage everyone to, when they look in the mirror, use it as an invitation to maybe be a little kinder, a little gentler with yourself, and maybe focus on the one thing that your skin is doing for you, right? It's your greatest protector, your greatest ally. And it's from there that the relationship with yourself, with your skin, can really flourish and build your resilience. So that's all I would say is maybe just, consider a different approach to skincare.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing about all your programs.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Dr. Barr and now have a new appreciation for your skin. Your skin's a messenger. It may be giving you important information about other areas of your body. So make sure to pay attention to it. And also, when you add breath work and stress reduction practices into your life, guess what? As Dr. Barr said, your skin improved. It'll be more vibrant, glowing, so it's a win-win situation. All the links that Dr. Barr talked about will be in the show notes. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.